very famous faces suddenly shrink over the last couple of years. And when you read their autobiographies, they talk about like going to the gym and eating, getting their lifestyle right. Do you think they're lying?
I mean, obviously, yes.
It does appear, I wasn't sure if it was just me, but think about a lot of people that were a little bit bigger, and it seems that suddenly everybody's kind of cracked weight loss, and it's rapid and it's super fast. I don't want to name any particular names because it's not my place to talk about individuals like that, but it really does seem like Hollywood has found a great personal trainer. And I'm just like, I'm wondering if this is what it is.
Yes. Although I would say the people you and I are thinking about are almost all women. And I do think we should bear in mind, I know you would agree with this, I'm not making this as a point against you. Women get so much more shit than men for this sort of thing, right? Yeah. Like, actually, it was interesting, one of my editors said to me, you know, I was saying, why has no one else written a book about Ozempic yet? Why am I the only one? And they said, because only a man could write this, because a woman would be crucified for writing it, right? She would be monstered. And if you look, whenever, even someone as unbelievably popular and amazing as Oprah, who slightly surreally is my friend, gets savaged for it, right? And there's lots of deep underlying reasons for that came out for me as well, actually, that I projected towards myself. I remember for a long time taking the drug. I felt like, I mean, I mentioned this a little bit before, but I felt like I was cheating. I felt like I was sinning almost. And I started to look at the kind of deep ideas that are so deep in our kind of collective unconscious. If you look at, so for example, in the 6th century, the Pope Gregory I, draws up the 7 deadly sins, right? And one of them is gluttony. And it's this image, it's always depicted with an image of some hugely fat person looking like a pig, you know, and it's horrible. It's very deep in our culture, the idea that being obese is a sin, right? If you look at the forms of weight loss we admire, they follow the pattern of sin, right? The kind of classic Catholic pattern of sin. You sin, then you have to suffer and redeem yourself, and then we forgive you, right? Yeah. So if you look at the forms of weight loss we admire, they're ones where people are humiliated and suffer terribly. You starve yourself, you think about that show, The Biggest Loser, which I hate, where severely obese people are made to sort of compete in grueling, horrific forms of exercise. Then we're like, okay, Jabba, we forgive you now. Do you know what I mean? We use these kind of stigmatizing ways of thinking. Cheating is a bit more subtle. Because I kept thinking, I'm cheating as I do this. And I was like, well, that's really weird. If I had a heart problem and I took statins, I would not think I was cheating, right? I was like, why is that? And I think it's partly, so people put in a huge amount of effort to be thin, right? Loads of women watching this, and it's disproportionately women, will suffer some privation and deprivation in their life because they are really trying to be thin. And then they hear, oh, this fucker just injects himself once a week and he gets to be thin like me. It's like they feel the way I imagine cyclists do when they look at Lance Armstrong, right? And the only way out of that negative conversation where we turn on each other like rats in a sack is to realize, oh, there is a sin and there are people who are cheating, but it's not Oprah. It's not someone who, Jeff Parker, that guy I mentioned who, didn't want to die young. It's the food industry that fucked all of us. That's why we're in that race, right? That's why you're starving yourself. That's why we feel we're sinners. Okay, well, we can collectively come together and challenge that shared opponent if we want. But if we're just going to get into, look, it's very hard in this age of social media madness to not have every conversation turn into a toxic conversation. And it's not surprising that something as charged as the debate about Ozempic and weight has become so toxic so quickly. But again, we don't have to do that. The toxicity isn't going to get us out of this, right? We're in a shared crisis. Everyone watching has someone they love who is on course to die young because of the problems associated with obesity, because obesity is so widespread in this society in a very recent amount of time. Look at a picture of a beach in Britain in 1975, not a million years ago. Everyone is thin by our standards, right? This happened in the blink of an eye in human terms, right? Again, we don't have to tolerate that.
Part of it is also we don't like when people lose weight, some of us, because it shines a light on us. And I think about someone like Adele, who dropped a ton of weight very quickly. And the shocking thing when she dropped that photo, I think it was at like a birthday party, because she went from like being, a certain weight to then dropping weight very quickly. So because we don't see Adele's private life much, it was just this selfie she dropped. And if you look online at the reaction, people were betrayed. They felt betrayed by Adele's weight loss. Not because they're assuming she used Ozempic or anything, but the fact she's now not the way she was in terms of her weight, people were like almost angry about it. And the same happened with Rebel Wilson. When Rebel Wilson dropped a ton of weight, because in her book she talks about, she wanted to increase her chance of having a kid. So her doctor advised her to lose the weight. People were almost angry that they lost someone they could maybe relate to, or that made them feel a certain way about themselves, which I find to be really interesting, that we actually don't like it when someone loses weight.
We've got to understand where that's coming from. Obviously, I don't support anyone being cruel to people online, and it's good for both Adele and Rebel Wilson that they've improved their health. But I think where it comes from, and a lot of these things that can seem a little bit odd that are kind of said, we've got to realize how much shame people are soaking up on this issue. If you have a BMI higher than 35 and you're a woman, 45% of women in that position get insulted every single day in public. Every day, right? So you're walking through the world constantly being made to feel there's something wrong with you, being treated like shit. And I can see how people in that position develop a sort of parasocial relationship with Rebel Wilson or Adele. They're like, oh, look, we can look to Adele, and they feel trapped. They feel they can't lose weight. And then they see Adele and Rebel Wilson, and they're just like, oh, et tu, Brute, fuck you. I get it. Now, it's not the right response. I would want to talk to them more about, okay, well, we want to think deeper about this, but I can see where it comes from. And I can see why some people look at me and go, you fucker, right? I totally get it. I suspect I would have felt that anger were I not me looking at me, right? Mm-hmm. So I get where the anger and this comes from. From the moment we're born in this culture, we are primed to be overweight, and we are primed to feel tremendous amounts of shame about being overweight, right? And anything that comes along and brings up those stories and forces us to think to them, brings them to the surface, like these new weight loss drugs, just leaches out of all of us so many negative and angry and hurt feelings. And I felt it myself, right? I felt so much self-doubt all the way through this. I still feel self-doubt about it. I still have days where I wonder, am I doing completely the wrong thing? So I do think we have to understand where it's coming from, and not just sort of, I know you're not doing this, you're always interested in understanding where people come from, but it's tempting to just condemn people and go, look at this bad behavior. And I'm always more interested when people are behaving badly, and it is cruel to say to Adele, you bitch, you betrayed us. I would never say anything bad to Adele anyway because I love Adele, but
so
I saw her in Vegas, she's incredible. But I do think we always have to try to understand, and it comes from a place of profound pain, and that's not a pain that those people deserved, right? And that's a pain they should never have been subjected to.
I really do admire Oprah. I've watched her. She's kind of like a role model of mine for how she's kind of conducted herself throughout her career. And as you say, she's a friend of yours. And she's, I think, recently come out and admitted to using Ozempic. She's talked about how she struggled with weight for her life. And Ozempic has been a bit of a magic bullet, it seems, for her in her weight loss journey. You know her as a person. I've not been paying enough attention to her describing her decision to know why she decided to take Ozempic versus, I don't know, some other form of dieting. Has she explained that?
Yeah, she talks about it very movingly. She talked about it in an interview with People magazine and in a brilliant special for ABC, I think. Nobody has publicly tortured themselves with diets more than Oprah. There's this famous clip that you've probably seen where she comes on stage on her show and she's wheeling a huge bucket of fat. And that's the amount of fat she'd lost on this diet. And she describes very movingly in the special, she says it much better than I can, how she had starved herself to get that, right? And you think about, so she had tried all the extreme diet and exercise options that were available, and they'd always yo-yoed back for the reasons that we talked about before. So, and she had to have a knee operation. I'm not giving away anything. She's disclosed this. She had to have a knee operation, and she was very worried about her health. And so for those reasons, she's made this choice. There are lots of reasons to be worried about these drugs, but I have found it very hard when you talk to people who've really struggled with this, like that guy Jeff Parker I mentioned before in San Francisco, like Oprah, people who've made the decision to do it and seen the benefits of the weight loss, staggering benefits, whatever the other arguments are, I don't want to argue against them, right? If you are taking these drugs and experiencing an enormous improvement in your health, as they both have, and as lots of other people have, then that's been the right choice for you. Now, that won't be right for everyone. I met people who really regretted taking the drugs for all sorts of reasons, including many of the terrible side effects and risks. But I think we have to be truthful to the complexity of these drugs, right? I mean, one of the reasons it's called Magic Pill, the book, is because there's 3 different ways you could think about this as magic. Loads of people who take the drug go, this is magic, right? So the first form of magic is obvious. It seems to solve a problem so quickly, so effectively that you're like, whoa, it's like a miracle, right? That's one way. The second way is it could be magic like a conjurer's illusion, right? It could be like a magic trick. It seems to solve the problem but doesn't, or sets up and trains something else. Or the third way is think about almost every fable about magic is you get what you want, but then you get what you want in a way you didn't quite expect. You make a wish with the genie and you get what you want, but the wish doesn't quite work out how you thought. Most famous story about magic is Fantasia. You know, the magic can spiral away from you. So I think one of the things we're still trying to figure out is what kind of magic is this? Is it a magic solution? Is it a magic trick? Or is it a magic solution that's going to spiral in all sorts of unpredictable directions? I have to say, when you were holding that pen and looking at me, I got weird, like you were doing slightly judgmental Dragon's Den eyes, and I was like, shit, how do I persuade him to invest in me? Right?
That's so funny.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.